Unfiltered opinions.
Sometimes you have ideas and you're not quite sure why.
As you secure the bag.
Sometimes you meet people and realize there's probably a reason why you stayed in touch.
Just listen.
Sometimes all the pieces just come together by themselves.
I'm Jimmy Moyaha.
And I'm Simon Brown.
Welcome to Insider Exchange.
Good morning, Insider community. Welcome back. We have missed you guys. That's the show. Goodbye. No, just kidding. It's good to be back. We took a bit of a break because we're allowed to do these things. There were a lot of holidays. It didn't make sense. There was a lot of confusion. And now Side tells me the unfortunate news that we are back to 6 weeks of not a single break in the week.
5-day work weeks until 16 June. It's a Monday, 6 weeks today.
Can't we space that out? Can't we just like take some of the April holidays and just like sprinkle them into like a random Wednesday here?
Don't touch the April holidays. The April holidays are good. What we need to do is sprinkle some holidays around. So I take things
holidays.
I take things into my own hands. I've got some holidays coming up in those 6 weeks. I can't wait 6 weeks.
Okay, there we go.
I got a wedding. I got to go to Cape Town to do some talking. And yeah.
I think we're both in Cape Town to do some talking this month. Before, end of the month, mid-month, end of the month. I might do Nampo as well, middle of the month, next week, if not.
Nampo's too cold. Actually, my Cape Town is 3rd of June.
Oh, okay.
Nampo's too cold.
Nampo is cold.
I can't do Nampo.
Nampo is...
Well, I could do it between 12:30 and 2.
When the sun is at its best.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's a lot that happens and there's a lot of stuff that we need to get into. Shout out to all of those that are joining us on our live stream and shout out to our TikTok community. As always, we love having you guys on board. There we go, Incognito, Jimbo. You guys, we've missed you guys, eh? Hey, it's been a tough time. Market matters this week. We're going to get into the developments that are coming out. We've got interest rate decisions out of the Central Bank of South Africa as well as the US Federal Reserve. We kind of think they're equally as important at this point.
MPC's end of month.
Yeah, this month.
Okay, this month.
So this week is Federal Reserve.
Wednesday.
MPC is next week or the week after that, so not this week. But what we are going to be looking at is that MPC meeting will coincide with Budget 3.0. Yes, folks, it is the third iteration of the budget speech. I've spoken to National Treasury. I spoke to them last week, and I asked them, my very first question was kind of, is this going to essentially be a different budget to what we got? And by all accounts, it is a new budget.
By accounts, it's a new budget. They are also including the DA and other parts of the coalition are involved. Although the minister did say that they should actually come in August ahead of the MTBPS budget thing in October. But it does just, by all accounts, as you say, is going to be a new budget.
Yeah,
from scratch, which is only fair. And frankly, it comes back to, so there's two challenges. Firstly, I think our GDP expectations from Treasury, which was 1.9%, has gone lower in the months since that budget take one. Would have been 3 months. We now what the IMF is saying 1 or something like that. So revenue is getting a nice stack to it. And surely, after all of these months of talking, the minister has lots of ideas on where he can find a measly 17 billion, because that's all that 0.5% VAT gave him.
Side note, before we carry on with the budget speech, we're carrying on with our names. This week, I am Dylan, but spelt D-E-L-A-N. Simon has managed to somehow retain the correct spelling of his name, but we will see how that continues to unfold, and we will see when or how many of these we need to do before Starbucks gives us that sponsorship. Shout out to Starbucks or not.
Hey, Starbucks.
The budget speech coming up, there's the measly 17 billion was one thing. There was also the question of the comment made by the minister to say, now that I have to cancel the VAT increase, it's now going to cost us 75 billion. So I then went and asked, and I was like, how did we get from, like, the math wasn't mathing at the time. And the DG of National Treasury said that, well, of course, it was the 17 or 11 odd billion or whatever the amount was for this year. It was next year's continuation. So next year's
this 30 billion. Because it could go another 0.5%.
Yes, so the new 0.5% and the existing 0.5%, and then the other years and all of that going
Okay,
forward.
that takes to 75.
Yeah, so they do the medium-term planning and all of that sort of stuff.
That math adds, but like so you need 75 billion over 3 years.
But again, even with the 75 billion over 3 years that you need, getting that from VAT as opposed to getting that from austerity and cutting expenditure, surely that should be a focal point. Surely that should be a starting point to say we have things we can cut back on that are reasonable. And everybody's going to say, oh, but what things and how are you going to justify where to cut or whatever? Folks, 2023 or 2024 financial year, we spent almost 4 billion rand on VIP security.
Yeah, and 7 billion on diesel for Eskom. I mean, there's 11.
There's 11. There we go.
We're not even trying hard
Get
yet.
us a calculator. We'll try harder. We'll see where we get to. You know what I mean? We can find the 75
And in
billion.
fact, there's 2 presidential protection unit vehicles parked downstairs. Like the president isn't here because there are only 2. Right? If he
Yes.
was here, there would be...
So I drove through Sandton this morning, drove past the convention center, and there is a strong police presence there. You know, remember the old Casper vans, the big white ones? They are parked outside the convention center. There is police deployed within the entire square block of the convention center, down Alice Lane, down Maud Street, down I think it's, what's the other one that goes down? It's Alice Maud, up the one that goes up past the Michelangelo. There's a strong police presence there, and I don't know what's happening. I haven't heard anything about a dignitary being there. The closest thing I can think of that took place at the convention center recently was, I think, over the weekend or last week, the roast of Helen Ziller, but I don't know if that was there or if that took place somewhere else.
There would be that much protection.
Yeah, there is, and I don't think there's a G20 meeting or gathering
I've just had
yet.
a check here, and so key dates, no, there was December, there's a bit happening in February, again February, and then it's November.
Yeah. So there is a strong police presence right now in Sandton City. I don't know if we're doing a dry run of some sort. Perhaps it's rehearsal days for November, but that is something else. We're getting sidetracked, folks. We apologize for that. Back to Budget 3.0. We are expecting to see a lot of new things that are going to be announced in this time's budget that might not have been announced in the previous budgets around how they can make up the shortfall and all of that. But is 3 weeks enough for them to rework the entire budget?
It has to be. The short answer is that's
Well, it
what
was
we
enough
got.
to rework the first one into the second one, I suppose.
Yeah. But it also comes to what we're looking for in our budget is, and it's what I criticized the first budget 1.0, whenever that was, 21 Feb or whatever.
The one
it
that
was.
didn't happen, the one that wasn't delivered.
The one that I went all the way to Cape Town for, and I listened to you on
Oh,
the
that
radio
one.
for a long
that one. The one I still have scars and mental trauma from.
Because it's like budget's cancelled. I'm like, so what's Jimmy going to do for 2 hours now?
We're going to talk about how it was cancelled.
I went and sat around a pool and had a drink. Bring some clever ideas. I mean, just bring one clever idea.
Not 10.
Just one. Just a clever idea somewhere. Like, for example, I don't know, Eskom, we're going to have load shedding instead of diesel. And that's not a clever idea. But you know what? VIPs, you're on your own. Here's a stun gun. I mean, something like that. Let's come with at least one clever idea that might not make up all the shortfall, but shows that there is some innovation and cleverness happening in our budgeting process, rather than just
Some concerted
same old,
effort is what you're saying.
same old. Hey, for example, 20% of our budget is going into education. Come on, really? 400 and call it 500. It was 509 billion for this year, which we don't have. Really, we just don't get the bang for buck there. What can we do in that regard? And I'm not saying that we should cancel the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. I think that's a good idea. I don't think we should attack the social grants. I think they're important. But let's come up with some clever ideas. Let's issue some, I don't know, maybe we issue 100-year bonds at 0% or backed by gold. You get gold bars at the end. I don't know, something like that. Let's come up with something different and clever.
Okay. So, again, I support the innovation aspect of it. But what we've seen in the past is it's not South Africa's inability to raise capital, to raise money, to raise
correct.
revenue. Edward Kieswetter and his team at SARS had a surplus above expectation of 8 billion rand. They can find the money. It's how the money's deployed, isn't it?
Well, and that is the problem.
Which is where the budget comes in.
And it comes back to to our spending. And so for the education, and I can't, the facts are so out of date, I'm not even going to quote him. But like, we spend way more than Mozambique per kid on education, and yet Mozambique is in like top quartile and we're in the bottom quartile. It's that we spend our money badly and inefficiently. And that is the challenge. And so maybe it's a case of, okay, if you're a public servant and you find us R1 million of waste, we'll give you half of it. Yeah, how about that?
Okay. So now we are rewarding
so
actual service delivery.
Well, yeah,
of sorts.
so someone could go create R1 million of waste and claim it. I appreciate the loopholes, but let's get some out the box.
Some innovation, thinking,
because we are in trouble.
So the interesting thing about the looking at things from a different perspective was I heard, and I was driving into the studio this morning, I heard the comments made by the ANC's Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, who's a former minister within the cabinet, saying that the ANC has been blamed for the VAT increase, and the ANC has started engaging in conversations to ensure that there's certain critical line items that are not left out of the budget because they were blamed for the VAT increase, blah, 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 blah. Effectively saying that the VAT increase was not their fault. And I found myself sitting there thinking, and I don't want to get political about this because that's not what our show does, right? I found myself sitting there thinking, the Minister of Finance, the current Minister of Finance, was deployed from the ANC by the President of the ANC, granted in his capacity as the President of the country or whatever, but he's not a opposition party deployee. So how far off is the policy that you can say, oh, this was not an ANC idea, but rather, let's throw the minister under the bus and say this was a Minister of Finance idea, and he came up with it all by himself. Now, the Minister of Finance in the past has owned up to it. He's never been shy to own up to the decisions that he's made in putting together the budgets with his teams and all of that, and I applaud him for that, right? But there was also a time when he was deployed within the ANC, and he made some tough decisions there, and people didn't like him there. But I found it very interesting that when we are at a time where we are trying to provide solutions going forward, political parties are saying, oh, this wasn't us. The same political parties that voted for this thing to go ahead, oh, this wasn't us. They vote when we had the vote for the appropriations bills and all of those things. They were the parties that voted in favor of these things. Now they're the parties saying we didn't support this. But we digress. That's neither here nor there. That's what it is. I want to get your thoughts on something, Simon. James wants to know our thoughts on ASP Isotopes plans to list in South Africa. Now, they're listed in the NASDAQ. I spoke to the ASP Isotope chairman and CEO last week about their planned listing, Paul Mann. They intend to come and list in South Africa. They've got a listing in NASDAQ, so this would be an inward listing into South Africa. And I raised the point to say, you don't often see those things happening, right? Inward listings and all of those sorts of things. Now, the timing of that is one thing. I also raised the point of saying, but if tensions are strayed between the US, why Yeah,
I asked him about tariffs. He didn't like that question at all.
Yeah, he said to me, look, a lot of the things that they produce at the moment are kind of exempt from the tariff regime as it stands, and they hope that it'll stay that way. So they'll be okay from that perspective. But your thoughts on the listing overall from a market's perspective?
No, look, new listings are great. It's nice to have so it is actually a South African company. It's mostly out in Pretoria.
They've got about 90% of their staff, 98% or so of their staff here.
Et cetera, in South Africa. Now, I think they've got 4 staff in the US, and that's probably the bosses. I like the concept of it in terms of this looks lacquer, it's new, it's innovative, it's isotopes, it's clean energy, food security, international orders, etc., etc. And new listings are always great. Make no mistake. And this would be about an 8 billion ZAR listing. So it's a proper chunky. It's not a little small cap. It's kind of like a little mid cap. So I really like it. I also chatted with Paul last week. Lots to like about it. But Julieta Televi wrote an article this morning, and she's like, there's a short seller out there who's like, this thing is a house of cards. So go to Currency News and read that. But the listing is mid-yearish. So it's actually mid-year is not that far away.
Subject to approvals and all of those
JSC,
sorts of things.
What the JSC is going to say, no?
No, of course not, right?
To a listing?
And also with that listing, how does that then affect from a JAC perspective, how does that affect things like your weightings? Because for the longest time, things like the Naspers have been such a heavy concentration on something like the top 40. I can imagine something that's got liquidity in the US that is, I think it was around 7 billion rand or 4 to 7 billion rand in market cap in South African terms. That would obviously then put it somewhere not at the bottom of the list of the JSE stocks that we have.
So it would come in, it would get into the all share, it wouldn't get into top 40. So the way they typically do it is free float on the local shareholder register. In other words, how many South Africans hold it? So let's say market cap's 8 billion, but only 10% of the shares are held in South Africa, in other words, on the straight register. Then it actually only gets quantified as an 800 million market cap. So it will probably be quite small unless South Africans go absolutely crazy for it. Now, a big part of it is, won't it be great? And, be getting some funky tech listings in South Africa. Our current tech listings is like Data Tech and, Mustech, and they're leaving, et cetera. Yes, but, and the but is, don't get me wrong, I like these on the JSE. We could buy them on the NASDAQ.
That's fair. That's fair.
The difference is, of course, none of us had heard of ASP Isotopes until they
the
made
listing.
the announcement.
Absolutely.
Because there's, 10,000 stocks in the US, and how the heck do we find half of them?
Yeah, and the other thing as well is when you then start to look at these listings, you look at, if I want to access it via the NASDAQ, do I then have foreign currency exposure and all of that and offshore products and blah, blah, blah? Does it fit into an ETF? All of those sorts of things. So we welcome the listing. We are always happy to welcome new participants and new things. It gives diversity to our exchange. And I think our exchange does need that. I think it does need a lot more in terms of, granted, we'll never get to the diversity that exists on something like the S&P 500 or other international markets. But you can't have a market that is continuously the same companies, the same size, the same... you need growth, and we're not getting that many new listings from our own local bourse, or from our own local companies that are based here, because some companies are actually just looking at it and saying, but delisting, existing companies are delisting, and new companies are saying, is it worth it to list? So if you want an exchange to grow, you kind of do need new listings in whatever shape or form.
And this is certainly what the JSE is focusing on. We've had a couple of property stocks coming out of the UK. There's the one, I think it's a hospital group. There's another which is all about, they own the buildings which Carrefour and others sort of operate out of, these sort of mega store type things. So we have seen some of them come in. And again, we could have gone to AIM and bought them there, but it creates awareness, it creates some ease. It means I can just simply put them into my little fund. It also means, we don't have mandates like the CIS guys do. So suddenly a CIS, one of your unit trusts or whose mandate is JSE listed, can jump on that bandwagon as well. So it does create some opportunity. I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen a massive amount of liquidity in those REITs that have come. I don't know why, because I think they're certainly nice and attractive. Maybe the pricings are wrong, but they're different. We don't have a health REIT on our market. We don't have a supermarket REIT on our market. So it does bring some extra flavor. And we don't have anything like the Isotopes people.
While we are looking at things that we do have on our market, I want to take a look at the JSE and how the markets have opened. We're going to see if we can do this a lot more going forward, just looking at how markets have started off the day and potentially how they're going to be starting off the week. And I see that the JSE is in green territory at the moment. There is a lot of quiet in the market today. Asian markets are closed, various holidays. The UK has decided they want a banking holiday as a result. And I suppose it's just our markets mainly and the US markets that'll then kick in. But our markets have opened in the green today. We are still kind of sitting around those all-time high levels on the top 40 of around 84,000 points. And I'm guessing that markets are kind of going to stall around that range until we have some inclination of what direction
until we get like the US Open or something like that. That'll start to kick us through. So you got to love Japan, man. Japan have the best holidays. Today they're closed for Children's Day. Hong Kong's closed for Buddha's birthday.
Buddha's birthday. Hong Kong.
Yeah, look, we do it. We do Christmas. They do Buddha's birthday.
Hong Kong is an interesting thing, and we will get into the Hong Kong one in our next update on the trade wars, because Hong Kong has historically been a neutralish kind of ground for China and the US, and recently has come under fire or not come under fire, but rather has been the subject of contention because the US blocked a listing that was set to take place. Do you remember CATL batteries, CATL batteries?
Yes.
Faisal, one of our YouTube community members put us onto that stock and asked us to get our thoughts on it. They had planned an IPO, and their IPO was
Because they currently trade in Shenzhen, I think.
yeah. So they had planned an IPO. Their IPO was kind of underwritten by Morgan Stanley and I think it was Bank of America. At the very last minute, the two banks pulled out for what looks like nothing other than political reasons. So this is now a very interesting development in the trade war space, where you're seeing political interference coming into markets, where markets historically, and I mean, America has bragged about it for years, saying that they are a free market economy, there's no interference or manipulations or those sorts of things, and clearly something's amiss. But that's for our next update on the trade war, which we will do at another time, because we are taking a bit of a break from the trade wars. We're taking the 90-day break seriously, and we're going to try and discuss the trade war as little as possible in that period of time. I think we have run out of time, folks. Thanks so much for tuning into Market Matters. We are going to get into our deep dive. If you might be wondering what the deep dive is about, as you can see, there's a little something on the table that doesn't look like it quite sits there on the regular basis. I recently returned from a trip to China while we were on the break, and I am pleased to report some interesting findings about the world of luxury. Those that have been on TikTok, those that have been everywhere on social media, listening into how China has said that they were the ones that produced all the luxury goods in the first place. Stick around for the deep dive. We've got some very interesting things to show you there. But that's Market Matters, and that's where we're going to leave it for now.